Hello and welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Devani Alderson. We are the mother-daughter co-founders of the I Create Daily brand.
We are passionate about encouraging positivity, creativity, and productivity while bringing you information and resources that support your creative aspirations.
I Create Daily is for creators in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. So if you're into creating anything, this podcast has something for you.
So tell us, what would support you most in your journey? You can reach us at creators@icreatedaily.com.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Hello and welcome to the I Create Daily podcast, a movement for creators serious about their work. I'm Devani.
And I'm Leora.
And if your goal is to lead a more authentic, healthy, and purpose-filled life, you will enjoy the conversation with today's guest. Jill Sylvester has 20 years experience as an intuitive and holistic mental health counselor, where she has successfully guided hundreds of clients towards great health and life balance. More than a holistic practitioner specializing in energy and intuition, Jill is also a product creator and author of both fiction and nonfiction books with themes geared toward helping more people than Jill can reach through her clinical practice. Jill has created a line of products called Planting the Seeds, which is a line of self-help cards based on therapeutic models of self-esteem building for children. And Jill has published 2 books, Land of Blue, and she's about to launch Trust Your Intuition, her new book, and we'll dive into that today. So welcome, Jill.
It's nice to see you both, Leora and Devani. Nice to talk with you.
Nice to talk with you. You cut out for just a minute there, so I just want to make sure if the sound ends up off, then we'll pause it. But hopefully, once you start talking, we'll give you the signal if we're not hearing you well.
Hear me now?
Yeah. I think, and sometimes it's bandwidth or Wi-Fi connection or whatever. Sometimes that flips off, so we'll just keep monitoring it. Seems fine for now. But tell us how you got into doing what you're doing, what you've been doing for the past 20 years.
Okay, so about 20 years ago when I had my first child, I really started getting into the self-help intuitive piece and worked with that for a few years, self-study, and decided that I wanted to do something with it professionally. So it wasn't really my particular style to, hang my shingle on the door and say Jill Sylvester Intuitive. So I decided to go back to school and pursue a graduate degree in counseling. After I actually had a dream that instructed me to do that. So I went back, and it took me 5 years to get my degree with 2 babies at home. And I did it, and I opened a practice working with, I'm a licensed mental health counselor, so there's certainly the traditional lens that I look through, the clinical piece, but really more, and particularly why clients come to me, is more of the alternative piece. So I look through that alternative lens, I would say, for most of my session with people and my relationships with people, so that I'm combining both as more of an integrative counselor and really just helping them feel better. So that could be anxiety, it could be job searching, it could be relationships. I mean, there's a plethora of reasons people come in to talk to an objective person. And so I use my intuition in that process as a licensed mental health counselor.
Fantastic. And so you're saying you didn't want to just hang a shingle with intuitive counselor or coach. Does that mean that so tell us about your own intuitive journey. When did that begin to develop, and what role has that played in your life?
I've always been into dreams and interested in intuition in the background for, as long as I can remember, but it really kicked up after I had my first child, my son, who will be 20 in December. So it's been quite a journey. It really, as it does for many women who become pregnant, and I hear these stories, that portal kind of opens up. So I think it was always there for me, and then it just, kind of exploded after I had my son. And so I really was intrigued, as anybody would. Why is this happening to me? Why now? What's the purpose of it? And so I really became, really focused, in addition to being a mother, on exploring that path of intuition and what it meant for my life and then eventually on how I was going to use that intuition in order to guide other people. So, you know, I can happily say that I've been doing that for 10 years in private practice and working with people to explore their own intuition, which is what my next book is all about.
So for people who don't feel like they're connected with their own intuition, and just in general, like everyone has different kinds of intuitive experiences and perceptions. So what would you be comfortable sharing relative to how intuition has manifested in your life?
I would say, you know, I'm trying to think of where to start here. There's so many things. Definitely, I'm an emotional person. Like it's more of the feeling part. So as someone who's taken part in different intuitive kind of experiments, I worked on cold cases with law enforcement in the past. The emotional piece is where it's at for me. So I'll bring that in session. I hope I'm answering your question. My mind's kind of going all over the place here.
Sure, yeah. I threw you a left curve question there.
That's okay. That's okay. So yeah, it's working with people on how to understand themselves better, and to, for myself, being able to just, you know, if the universe gives me something, I guess that's the best way to answer it. If the universe gives me something that I need to use my intuition on, whether it's helping a client go a little bit deeper within their own psychic process and understand themselves better, then I will open up to that. If there's something externally that I need to know more of and the universe guides me in that direction, then I'll open up for that. I really just, I over the years, I think I've cultivated being a good listener. And so I try to work with it in there's many ways it shows up, right? You know, think of how we all deal with intuition on a daily basis, from what foods are right to eat in the moment, from the people that we should or should not be hanging around, from different job searches, what's right, what feels right, you know. So intuition takes us in so many different directions, and it's such a crucial part of my life. It's in all of my moments. So really, it's just however it shows up. You know, I'm always, or I shoot to be always in alignment with that.
I love that, and we can pull that out as a quote. Intuition is in all my moments. That's a lovely way of putting it. I think that, and so I'm going to pursue that question just a little bit more. And I know it can be a sort of an uncomfortable place for an intuitive to, you know, that has that more, it's more pervasive kind of experience.
It's like an abstract
But
thing.
for those who think more black and white, and or want to begin to know how it is that they connect with their own intuition in each moment, what are some examples of how you recognize the universe showing up or responding to, you know, to what you need to know or what you're asking or whatever it is for you in the moment?
Okay, so meditation's a big part of it, but not exclusively. And so I say that because sometimes people want to start the process and they think they're going to just, you know, sit down and then it's going to be like a lightning bolt and the messages will come. It can be like that. So meditation is certainly a part of it, sitting down and being open to sit in stillness so that you can receive those messages from the divine, the universe, God, nature, you know, whatever it is for you and whoever's listening. So that's certainly a part of it. But it's also in the moments where we, you know, walk into something when we're thinking something that doesn't serve us, and we realize like that's, you know, those angelic moments, right? Those divine moments that are like, hey, redirect, you are off the path for a moment there. Like, let's not go in that direction. You know where that takes you. And it helps bring you back. Or it could be that certain sign, you know, everybody's got their certain signs from their ancestors or from the universe. And when those show up at just the right moments, when you need to get some guidance, you know, receive some guidance on a particular topic or an answer to your question, it's in those things too. So it can be the lightning bolts, it can be the intuitive clairvoyant moments that we get this pertinent piece of information that changes our lives, you know, for the better. It certainly can be that, and it can be in the most, you know, in the simplest, which are often the most beautiful as well.
So it's when you're dealing in the kind of space that you are and we are as well, and that is the concept also of how we manifest and create our day and our own reality to, you know, essentially to a large extent. And then it's like we all have to learn to balance that with tuning into the messages from the universe. And it's sort of like, I think one of the things that, those who move into really working with the mind, with thought, with manifestation, struggle sometimes to balance. And that is am I perceiving that because I think it's so? Or am I perceiving it because it's there and now I think it's so?
Yeah. And trust is a huge part of it. I'll often tell clients that I'm working with, take it out of the left brain, the rational part that says, hold on a second, is this, God talking to me? Or is this, just me and my imagination wanting it to? And and I think it's healthy to be skeptical of this process, because you can, kind of float up into that filter.
Yeah.
So being able to trust that you are guided from that place, and that if you need to use your rational brain in the process, then certainly that's what it's there for, right? But it's really a matter of taking the leap of faith, and that's a big part of it, as is discernment, which could be an hour-long conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Very true.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to ask, how do you help people both listen to their intuition, but then also craft whatever their path is at the same time? So, you help people level up, and like we do a lot of the same thing. We help people like identify what their purpose is and how to level up to that. So how much are you helping them learn to trust the intuition, but then also craft their direction at the same time?
So not fall back on just, I don't feel like doing something.
Right. Yeah.
Versus, pushing the boundaries for growth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're
Yeah,
referring to?
pretty much.
Yeah, it's part of evolvement is listening to the information and then acting on the information.
Yeah, that's good.
There's a line in The Land of Blue, my first novel, that says knowledge is power, but wisdom is in the application. And so when you are receiving that information, that's all well and good, but the most important thing is to walk the path. And so to be able to, cultivate that space in order to receive the information, which again could be meditation, full blown, where you're sitting there and you're in shavasana at the end of yoga, or you're just sitting in stillness, or it's in the moments of quiet. You could be washing the dishes and receiving information. You can be looking out the window and receiving guidance. So you get the information and then allowing it to just kind of sit and percolate, and trusting on what you need to do with that is the next part. So there's two parts to it, and in response to your question, Devani, is how to help people evolve. Like we need to be growing and moving. So when we're acting on that information, that's really the only way we're going to see growth. And that's a big difference in people's personal development, in my opinion, because sometimes you can sit with that information a long time and not do anything with it. Whether it's fear, or fear of change in relationships, fear of letting things go. But when you do, and you walk through that door, that's when things can really start to evolve for you in terms of purpose or health, or security within yourself and your relationship with the divine, and just being in alignment. And I think that's the goal for all of us, is to be in alignment most of the time. I'm no Eckhart Tolle. I haven't received that status for sure, but to me, that's the goal, is being in that kind of alignment. So
have you noticed that intuition increases the more you act on the intuition you're given?
Absolutely. Like anything else, if you're interested in something and you practice it, then you're going to get better at it. And again, something I say to my clients all the time, when you say you want, a more toned body, and you go to the gym and you lift weights for a few days and you complain you're not seeing results, it's like, you got to give that time. You have to show up, you have to set your intention, this is what you want, and then you have to work at it. Intuition is the same way. You flex that muscle, and you do that on a daily basis, or whatever that regimen is for you, and you will absolutely see results.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm as far as the client, I was going to say, I'm guessing you work with some creatives, but actually I don't know what kind of clients you typically see. Do you have a specific genre, or are you seeing like all kinds of clients in your practice?
I would
I mean,
say
sorry, yeah, clients. I was going to say, I don't know if you call them patients, but you call them clients, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's people who, you know, at this point, I've been in private practice for 10 years, and I would say it's people who really want to do better and be better. So we all deal with anxiety. We all deal with depressed feelings. Sometimes there might be situational reasons why people come in, and sure, that's a lot of the surface reasons. But eventually, once you get talking, it's really about how we all want to grow. We all want to feel better in a certain area. And when we can do that work every single day, it's not just that area that starts to get better. It's all areas, right? When we focus on personal development. So you know, many reasons people come in, but ultimately that's what it comes down to, the nitty gritty of the profession.
Okay. So, well, it makes sense because, I mean, there are a lot of practitioners who have a specific target in their practice, and that serves well. And yet, you know, we're all humans having this experience, and you know, like a recipe, there are only so many variations for if you're going to make a cake, you know, of the kind of ingredients you're going to put in there. So similar to holistic wellness and developing our intuition.
It's very similar with how we define the term creative. Like there are visual artists, there's photographers, there's writers, but it all falls under this large umbrella of creativity because creativity is expressed in all those ways. It's the same with personal development. It's like what we do is almost like just how we announce how we're growing.
Yeah.
But it's all growth.
That's a great point. Yeah, I'm glad you put it that way. But one thing we notice and observe is that, so creatives, a lot of times, especially those even more or functioning in the right brain, as it were, because they're sensitive and emotional and in tune, because, you know, being open and receptive, sensitive and emotional, you're also, it all open potentially to being extraordinarily impacted by negativity in the world, by your own negative loops and such, you know. So by the process of being open and receptive can make one vulnerable. So just in general, like for instance, there tends to be a lot of emotional and even depression, for instance, amongst creatives and artists and that sort of thing. It's just kind of, we all kind of, it's a generalization, of course, like anything else, but there are many who struggle with that. So what can you share on what have you seen in your practice relative to those who are, you know, really in the creative arena and struggling with depression and lack of motivation and the shadow self?
Yeah, the shadow. So before I answer that, first I want to say this is one of the reasons I was drawn to your podcast. I had listened to or your interviews. I had listened to Lisa Tenner, and I listened to the way you interview, and I love the angle of the creative, because I really feel like everybody is creative. And sometimes people hear that and say, it's not me. I'm not an artist. I'm not a writer. I'm not a photographer. But we are all creative, and we're all here to create something. So whether that's, you know, the mother who's creative, or the art, or the typical artist or writer, or all that, but we are all here to be creative. So my sense of it with people when they come in for, let's say, straight depression, is that they're not living their creative purpose.
Yeah.
And that's the angle, that alternative angle that I mentioned earlier, that I take with clients, as opposed to slapping on that clinical label of depression. Because when you do that, it for me, it makes people, I think, you know, you're stuck, like you're stuck there with that label, and that there's something wrong with you, versus you're out of alignment with what you are here to do. So once we start that conversation and we start to talk about what it is that you like to create, whether it's cooking or art or whatever it is, let's find it. Let's keep digging until we find it, because once you do, you're not going to need to come in and talk to me anymore, because you're going to be on your way, you know. So helping people to identify what's got them stuck, so that we can get to that, is the process. And, you know, about the shadow, my feeling is that the shadow, which is part of all of us, right? We all have dark and light within us. But I find that the shadow serves to hold us back from that creative process, from that light. And so again, referring to The Land of Blue, my young adult novel, I write a lot about the darkness through the metaphor of gremlins. and the use of entities, and helping people to get more comfortable with that shadow process. When you start to understand that, it's almost like, take it as a compliment. If they're working overtime in your life, it's because you're here to do something amazing, and they don't want you to. Because once you do that and you tap into that, and this is the same conversation with a child or an adult I'll have, you are then going to grow and affect the collective consciousness of this planet. So their job is to hold you back. So once you start to understand that, it becomes less of an intimidating, scary kind of a doom and gloom, you know, sense. And you can start to say, oh, I'm being tested in this moment. Isn't that interesting? I'm being tested. Okay, what do I need to overcome? And once you get more comfortable having those conversations and being able to identify that process within yourself, I find that you do start to evolve.
I love that you give the shadow a persona, because it really helps detach it from yourself, which kind of helps you look at it a bit more objectively. It reminds me a lot of how Stephen Pressfield calls it the dragon. It's like the dragon of resistance that crops up for all of us, or the gremlin shadow that tells you, oh, you sure you want to do that? But it's just a sign. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have. It's just we all have to work through it, like sprout through the darkness. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And sorry, go ahead. You were going to say?
No, I'm listening. Yeah.
Okay. What do you say with your clients who are stuck in their story? So there are some, like, I love that you bring in and invoke the creative process and encourage your clients to do that. And it's such an important point that we are all creative. And there are many people who assume they're not if they didn't have the artist or whatever, but that is our that is like natural part of humanity to be creators and co-creators. So I love that you mentioned that. But there are people who just in every walk of life get stuck in the story. And so when that's happening, what do you do? What do you recommend for your clients?
I would ask them a series of questions so that they can start to identify that they might be the, causing their own chaos, contributing to their own chaos. And so being able to say, how does that feel? Or if you're talking about the same thing over and over, what are you willing to do about it? What's the next best step out of there? So pushing it back to them so that they start to, again, tap into that intuitive process within themselves. I'm always coming from that place of how to get them to go inside themselves for the answer versus outside. And so when you ask questions like that, I find people start to understand that they may be contributing more to the problem of them being stuck than they realize.
Right. I'm going to pause this just for a second, Devani.
All right, we're back. We had a little tech glitch, but here we are.
Yeah, I think the sound is going to be better. So we're inspired by so much of what you're doing, and also the fact that you are not only, helping people in holistic health and wellness and intuition and energy work, but you are also entrepreneurial in your endeavors, and you're creating your own products. You are a multiple times author, not just of books, but of those cards that Devani mentioned earlier.
Planting the seeds cards.
Yeah, it's therapeutic tools that you can use with your clients. I'm sure you do, as well as the enabling you to reach a larger audience. So tell us a little bit about each of your products, your cards, and your books.
Sure. So thank you for that. Planting the Seeds is a line of cards that I came up with to use in session with kids that I was working with at the time, and also for my own children. In the first line of cards, actually, positive energy cards, my daughter illustrated the line. So we're pretty proud of that, which is
nice.
She looks at them in horror now, being a 16-year-old, but that was really fun for the both of us, as your mother and daughter team, right?
Yes. That's right.
We had a lot of fun doing that. So the line of cards, that first line are for kids ages 5 to 8, and they are designed to help kids think well starting first thing in the morning. So I love feedback from parents saying they start in their lunchbox, putting them in their lunch boxes, or starting the day, around the island at the kitchen, and being able to start with a positive mindset and being able to have discussion around those. And then our second line of cards are for kids 8 to 12, and those are affirmations. And the affirmation cards are a series of I am statements. And so being able to really work on those neurotransmitters, and you guys do a lot of that, especially in your daily prompts right now, right? I
Yes.
am, all of the I am. So being able to help kids switch over from the negative way of thinking, and it's pretty classic CBT, how we think is how we, cognitive behavior therapy. So how we think is how we feel is how we behave. So the
Nice.
series of I am statements helps kids to automatically go to something that's positive in order to elevate their mood. So those are the line of cards, and then we have an adult line that we're working on right now, and I eventually want to come out with a line for the Land of Blue as well. And then I have my books that that you mentioned, my young adult novel, The Land of Blue, which won a Mom's Choice Award and came out in July of 2017. And then
All right, back from one, hopefully the last tech glitch. We were left off at talking about your book, Land of Blue, and you were talking about some of the themes you dive into and what you're developing around the book.
So The Land of Blue is a young adult novel that I wrote in 2017, and it's essentially a self-help book under the guise of fiction, and it uses a lot of metaphors to portray the Land of Blue as a place of anxiety and depression. And it's about a young girl's journey whose dad, a young girl named Cassie, she's 12 years old, and her dad goes missing into the Land of Blue. And it's about how she follows the voice in her head who manifests on her grandparents' front porch and takes her to the Land of Blue to find him.
Wow.
Lovely. And then your next book, which is coming out as virtually like almost the day that we're recording this, which is May. Your book actually publishes May 31st of 2019. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the
Your newest book, which is Trust Your Intuition. So love that title. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So my self-help book, this is my first self-help book, and it's for adults and, highly motivated adolescents. And the book is about trusting your own intuition, 100 ways to transform anxiety and depression for stronger mental health. So again, that positive, always the positive bent of being able to take those feelings that we all feel and be able to do something good with them.
Great.
Listening to our intuition all the while.
So you're writing these books and creating products while also working in your practice, serving clients and being a mom and wife, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what are your creative practices that serve you in getting all that done?
Getting up early is the absolute key. It's very important. And being able to, take care of me first thing in the morning. So I go for my runs or I work out, my meditation always. But having, putting the oxygen mask on yourself first is so important when you have a responsibility to be so many things to so many people for the rest of the day. And I find it irresponsible if you don't take care of yourself when so many people are dependent on you or looking to you for guidance. So you need to be able to walk the talk, So first thing in the morning for sure. And then, that way you can be present with people, not thinking, oh, I got to get that run in, or, oh, I got to do this for myself. You can be really far more present with people. So the morning is definitely a huge help in the creative process.
Wonderful. Great. And in your business, so you're also balancing a practice and running that business with learning about publishing and writing and all the tools and things that creators need to get their work out into the world. So what has been your greatest struggle in all of that?
The time, definitely finding the time and making the time. So for example, when I was writing The Land of Blue, I was writing that book or the outline for the book from 4 a.m. till 6 a.m. An interesting little story before that is I was trying to figure out when I was going to spend the time writing this book and make this happen. And I kept getting up at 4:15 in the morning. So it was like a week, and it was just up and up, 4:15. I kept saying, oh, what's this? Again, looking at my intuition.
Right.
Significance of 4:15. And then finally, like a 2x4 hitting me over the head. I was like, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I have to start getting up. I'm getting up anyway. I might as well just start doing this now. So I wrote the book for many months from 4:15 to 6:15 in the morning. And then I'd go for my run and get my day started. But I got the book, done, quote unquote, during that time. And then from there was how to weave in, the actual writing and the editing and all of that. So being able to carve out every single day 2 hours to write the book, and always taking my Fridays. My Fridays were always a day to write, and figuring out that time, and then eventually having to pull back just a little bit from my client hours so that I could make it happen, especially when we were really knee deep into it and needed to keep it moving. So time, certainly always carving time.
What was the process like creating your cards, and how did you work with your daughter on that? How did that process look? So curious.
Really fun. I have to go back because it's been a while. I think she was, oh my gosh, I think she was maybe 5 when we started, when we created the first line of cards. So that involves sitting down at the kitchen table and having fun, with the crayons and coloring out our feelings, which is something I did with my own kids and kids in session at the time, because they don't have the language at that age to be able to say, I'm feeling very frustrated today because someone said something to me. So being able to draw out our feelings and mapping out how to help kids to work with that was where the cards came from. And so I would come up with the little idea for the jargon, and then she would draw the picture to go along with it. Like, for example, I dress for success today. And so it's helping kids to think what we wear, from the colors to the texture, is how we present ourselves to the world. And so thinking about setting an intention of how you're dressing each morning, whether it's in sweats with a baseball cap, which is how I look when I'm writing, or it's being dressed nicely to do an interview or to go to work in my office, you set that intention. And when you do that, you start to see that the world mirrors back to you the intention that you are setting. So we want to teach kids this at an early age. So drawing, me writing the text, and then my daughter drawing the visual to go along with it was really fun, because I was, we were learning in the process, and she's learning and contributing to that. So she felt responsible for that too.
That's awesome. Did you homeschool your kids, or you just no? Okay.
That's what I really love about that. Excuse me, and is that it's the concept of you, instead of just saying, "Well, think positive thoughts," or take this positive thought and think about it and dwell on it. Instead of that, you gave them a tool that incorporated the concept. So, in other words, think of how you're getting dressed, and you're dressing for success. So you've put the attention on, what am I wearing, to project that, as opposed to just saying a mantra over and over, and yet it has the same effect. So
back to the action.
That's that's a great tool. Devani and I were talking before we started our interview with you about how psychics and intuitives oftentimes use tools such as tarot cards, astrology, whatever it might be, the person's garment, to help them channel their intuitive and psychic abilities. And there is a difference, but a lot of times they're mixed in together, psychism and intuition. We have someone starting a motor. Hopefully that's not going to show. That probably won't show up so much on our interview because the mic will block it out. But sorry if that's what everyone's hearing.
I'll just hit my volume too, because I want to make sure that you're hearing it. So are you hearing it better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Better? Okay, good.
Well, yeah. Okay. So, but so it's like the tool is oftentimes just needed as a vehicle for helping people develop what's already there. Just like a page is needed for the artist to create, to do the painting. So the clothing or the, helped put on the mindset. So I really like that you use that as a tool.
Yeah, it was a really fun process to be able to work with her on that, and to be able to and make sure that kids are, again, learning from it's crucial that they learn this from a young age. And even at any age, if you some people say, oh, could I learn this now? And of course, it's just a matter of being aware, and those cards for kids are for adults too.
Yeah.
Start becoming aware that this is how you want to think and feel. Then all you have to do is set your intention for that, and really things just start moving, whether you're 5 or you're 50. So.
Are you hearing the mower in the background very loudly?
No, not at all.
Good. Okay, good. So we have a good mic. The Yeti mic is helping us, I think, with that. Yeah, that's, you were talking about setting the intention, and what was the last thing?
For adults too. Well, it's for adults too, and I think we, as kids, we're naturally curious about those types of topics. And then as we grow older and have the layers of whatever conditioning from wherever it comes from, we sort of stop listening to our own intuition because we're so, like, at least now, we're so indoctrinated almost to look everywhere else for the answers, but within ourselves. But whereas kids, even though they ask why, and they also have this intuitive sense of kind of figuring things out and observing.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to ask about the cards, the process of getting the cards published. So how did you begin that journey? When did you decide to do that, and how did you go about? You did self-publishing? How did you do that?
So the cards, the cards, I had my graphic designer who has done my website. We've gone through a few rounds of upgrading my website. She was the one who helped me with that first line, and so she took the designs and did what she does so wonderfully. And then from there we had to look into box companies and learning how that whole process. So we went with a bag, a mesh bag for the first line, and then for our second line we upgraded to boxes. And so
Nice.
You're always learning, when you're in
Yeah.
business, you're always learning, like, better ways to do things, and that's fun.
Yeah.
Where did the entrepreneurial drive come from? Because that's not every consultant and therapist or anything. So
Coach.
where did that internal drive come from? Have you always had that spark of just doing your own thing?
Yeah, I'm definitely a person who likes to do my own thing, for sure. But my undergrad is business. So, so my master's is in counseling and education, but my undergrad is business and finance. So I'm in a completely different career, but still some of the models still serve, being
Yeah.
for sure. So.
Awesome.
And I love how you're blending it. That's really lovely. I did want to mention something that came to mind when you were talking about sleep and getting up earlier. I'll see if I can find the research, but there are sleep studies that show that we basically have 90-minute sleep cycles. And so like Devani struggles with getting up early, for instance. And so what we were talking just the other day, that when you get up earlier, you're actually more energized than when you sleep later, because that sleeping later puts you in between the 90-minute cycle, so that makes sense that waking up, like if people are looking for time, how can I find time to do the work that really matters to me, especially if you're working full time, but you want to be a writer, you want to build your art business or whatever it is, then one of the places you can find that time is in the morning, and like working with this natural sleep cycles. And so if you are getting up, like at 4 or 4:15 rather than say 5:30, you are actually probably more refreshed and ready to work than if you had tried to get up just 30 minutes earlier. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. And I always find it fascinating how when you do get up early, and if you listen to so many motivational speakers and all the videos, right, in the morning on my runs, I just love these guys and who just pump you up with getting up early. You really do feel so much better.
Yes.
Think you won't. And that's the trick. When you get up, you think, oh my God, I'm going to be so tired and it's going to be an awful day. And it ends up being like this rock star day. So it never fails when you get up early. But what I said a few minutes ago, Devani, is you're still young. So don't worry. You're still young. I'm not getting up at 4:15 now. I'm getting up closer to 5:30 or 6 o'clock. But when you do get up in the morning earlier, you have so much more time to get things done that I find you are more refreshed, you are far more productive, and it gets you in a healthy, regimen and a sleep schedule to go to bed earlier so that you can get up and do it again the next day. So it's just a matter of scheduling and just getting yourself in routine, for sure.
Yeah, and productivity is naturally energizing, at least I've found. So, like, sure, you might be physically tired after doing a lot of work for the day, but, like, you don't, like, your energy doesn't feel drained. You feel good about accomplishing things and getting stuff done that needs to be done.
Yeah. And that's like what Gary Zukav talks about in Seed of the Soul, right? When the personality and the soul, when the personality serves the soul, and when you're in that zone, right? So when I remember once writing The Land of Blue, there was one Sunday where I was finishing the book, and it ended up being a 9-hour day, sitting at my desk, writing. I think I got up twice to get my daughter a snack, who was here with a friend, and to get a drink. And it was one of the best writing days ever. And 9 hours straight. So when you think again, if you think with the left brain, like, oh, a 9-hour day, what a grind, right? I was so in the zone. There was
Yes.
nothing that I would have rather been doing than sitting there. And I'm a person who has to get up and eat and take, get drinks and move around and all that. But it's one of those times when you're just sitting there in the zone, you have such a feeling of productivity that your rational brain goes out the window.
Yes.
Don't even entertain it, because you know you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And it's really like the greatest high, right? It's that greatest high of all. And so when you can sit and really be in that moment, that's what you're seeking. That's the creativity that you
definitely.
You know,
it's meditation. I'm sorry, I stepped on your words. That what was the last part you said?
That's where it's at. You know.
That's where it's at.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, meditation in motion. That sounds fantastic. So, what is it that what's next for you? You have a brand new book coming out, and do you have like a list of books that you want to write and products you want to create? What are your aspirations?
So, I think self-help is what most people expected from me, from, you know, my clients and things like that, from my first book. And again, The Land of Blue is essentially a self-help book under the guise of fiction, for sure. So self-help books, I have so many ideas for those, and I would love to crank those out, and that's my plan. But I also have a fiction series that I actually thought was going to be my second book, and then we put that on hold for a minute. It was done and ready to be released, and the plan was to release it at the end of last year. It's a fiction series about a 17-year-old intuitive who solves crimes using her intuition. So I was ready to release that, and then just some guidance from some folks said, let's come out with a self-help first, which will kind of introduce you and introduce the work and all of that. So I listened and did that. So the self-help book is next, and then the fiction series, which is a 7-book series, will follow. So I'd like to think they'll be intertwined. You know, we'll do some fiction.
Yeah.
Definitely. That sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
You got to keep us posted on that, because I'm already a fan of the series.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited for that, because I love fiction. I could get lost in fiction all day. I just love it. So yeah, I'm excited for that. I'll definitely let you know.
Fantastic. We look forward to that. Definitely. One of the things I just want to circle back to before we let you go, if you have a few more minutes. Okay. Just like, as you know, because you're also a member of the I Create Daily community, that we really are fond of using conceptual quotes and things like that to invoke one's own intuitive art and intuitive creativity. And are we on mute? No, we're good. Okay, good. And so, like, one of the things that I think so many people that go through the system of education as it is today, there's so much about structuring your time and your learning based on what people are pouring into you to learn, to know, to do. And so it's like intuitive, and there's not as much in the education system, at least the traditional education system yet, that really encourages people to open their intuition and to think from the inside out, which is part of why we're using the conceptual kind of prompts, and we have the intuitive art journals that help to encourage that, and it's the concept of thinking deeply. So we touched on with your intuition about the concept of right brain and thinking from your heart as opposed, or listening from your heart as opposed, and letting your thinking side and your brain side, your mind, not take over. And yet it's a balancing act, isn't it? It's a process of, I really like that you said listen and then take action, because the action then also incorporates the mind, incorporates the thinking part. So if you just touch a little bit more on the concept of listening to intuition and then submitting that to the conceptual mind, to the mind to reflect on and then put into action. If you have any other thoughts to say on that before we go.
Sure. I think for intuition, when you start to listen to it, it would really behoove each person to have a journal next to them. So if you're sitting down and meditating and you're working on flexing this muscle, then have a pen and paper nearby so that when you're done, you can write down your thoughts. Even if they don't make sense to you in the moment, you can go and talk to someone who speaks that same language with you so they can kick it around with you, or, you know, an integrative person in your life, therapist or whoever that kind of gets it. And that way you can kind of get a sense of what thread to pull. and then start to build an action plan on that so that it's grounded in both the left and right brain, and it's something that is going to serve you and be able to be, also a practical application in your life. So it's important to ground the idea.
That I like that. It's important to ground the intuitive ideas that come through the action and through thought. So with that does that sum that up?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Well, this has been fantastic. We've been really looking forward to meeting you. Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we let you go?
Just my website, if people are interested in checking out my work, it's www.jillsylvester.com. And my products, obviously, I have my book coming out on Friday, and our cards and our books. I would love people to, check it out and spread the word. That's how we get it done. So
definitely, we'll link.
Congratulations on the book launch, and we'll have all the links available on the episode show notes. Yeah,
and they can also get those on Amazon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have that all available.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Such a pleasure talking to both of you, and I love how you're always outside. I was hoping to do the same today, but it's a little rainy in New England today, so I wasn't able to do that. So the mower in the back makes it more authentic.
Oh, good.
Oh, nice.
We love to as much as we can. Sometimes, like, it's getting up to 90 today, so we were wondering, is it going to be too hot? We have a fan on, so it all works out. We're out here when we can be.
Such a pleasure talking to both of you.
Same here. Thank you, Jill.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.